everyone. Welcome to our webinar on a very rainy night in New York City. We're really excited to have you here. I'm Amanda. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AI for Education. If you've been here before, you know it takes us a little bit of time to get everybody in, but I'm glad that you're filing in. Please say hello in the chat, and we're going to where you're from, what you do would be lovely. We have an amazing panel today of students that I have gotten to meet over the last 6 months. So very excited to have you here listening to like the people that I learn the most from every time we interact with students on this topic is when I learn the most. So we're gonna give everyone just a moment to file in, say hi. So I see you've got Riverdale and Philadelphia, Ohio. Say hello. And we've got New York City. Also, Joe, I'm sure it's raining for you as it's raining for me. And so yeah, so please put in your information. Hey, Scott, and like good to see you again. And Samantha, I talked to Sam today. Love having you all here. And we're going to get started. So as I said, my name is Amanda Bickerstaff. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AI for Education. Today, we are going to have such a good time. We have a webinar with students focused on learning with AI from a student perspective. And this has come about because we have had a really big focus since we started AI for Education last year on including student voice. And so we've already had a student webinar that I thought was amazing. And we continue to get to work with students, including doing a promptathon with students out in Seattle last week. And we think that it's just so important to really situate and center our conversations about generative AI with students, because it's going to impact students significantly more than it's going to impact us. These students are going into a role that's radically transforming. And so it's really important to situate and center our conversations with them. So really excited. I've got Nick, I've got Pranava, and I've got Anna who are joining us today. But the first thing is I want to set the scene. So the first thing is get involved. So make sure that you're using the chat and Q&A functions. Our community that has been a part of our webinars, you might have been here for one the first time, or you've been here for many, but make sure that you're saying hello. I would say if you want to talk to each other, the chat's a great piece. If you want to talk to the panel or myself, use the Q&A. So if you have a question, and we will have time at the end for questions. The second is we're not going to do any prompting today, but if we do something that you want to kind of share and understand, feel free to kind of take notes and get involved. And the last thing is to share resources. If you have a great resource you'd like to share, please do so. So we're really excited. I'm going to ask my panel to come up on stage with me. I'm very excited to get everybody in. And I will say, first of all, let's give some love really quickly to our students here, because we have some students that are coming just like from school, had a long day at college. We have 2 high schoolers and a college student. And so let's give them some love first, like everybody, absolutely. But I want to say thank you so much for being here, everybody. And what we're going to do is we're going to start like we always do. So we're going to start actually with Nick, and we're going to I would love you to introduce yourself and what brought you to our webinar today, but also what is the first time you used generative AI?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amanda. And it's great to be here with all of you. So I've been working in AI for over 4 years now. I actually, past year, I've been focusing on AI in education. I'm now a first-year student at Yale, studying cognitive science. But during my time in AI and education, I've spoken directly and advised the U.S. Secretary of Education. I've worked with Google, and I've worked with the United Nations on this work. And my first time actually engaging with generative AI was in, I believe, late 2021. I downloaded a LLM locally to my computer and started playing with it, prompting, and I told my dad, like, you have to see this. This is crazy. This is gonna change the world. And since then, it's sort of exploded. That was my first experience.
That's great. And so you're an OG. So 2021 OG. Nick is like by far the first time I met Nick, I was like, how have you done so much? But someone that is so committed to the work that you do, I think is just amazing. We're so glad to have you here today. And next we're going to Anna. Anna, can you introduce yourself and talk about the first time you used generative AI?
Of course. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Anna. The first time I used AI, so just to preface with my experience with I have a school organization that we host AI lectures at the high school and elementary level, and we just explain how it can be incorporated into education curriculums and whatnot. But the first time I used AI, I'll be very honest, I was very nervous. I was like typing in ChatGPT and I was like, I think my hands are shaking. But then I asked it, come up with a synonym for, I think, the word happy. And it provided me a list of amazing like words because I love to write. And just that I saw so many possibilities in that moment. And for a moment, I realized that I had been villainizing AI for a while. And then I realized, no, it can be an amazing tool and it has so much capabilities. So yeah.
Amazing. And so can you tell us where you go to school and what grade you're in?
Yes, sorry. I go to Trinity Preparatory School in Orlando, Florida, and I'm in 11th grade.
11th grader. Talk about an 11th grader doing lectures already. And we're definitely going to talk about that balance of villainization versus, the potential of positive learning experiences. So that's great. And then Pranava is our first ever student voice intern here at AI for Education. You might have seen that announcement a couple weeks ago. Also a high schooler. So same to you, your introduction and then your first time using generative AI.
Sure, yeah. Hey everyone, my name is Pranava, and I'm in 11th grade right now, and I'm at Middleton High School in Tampa, Florida. In AI itself, in this field at least, I've first gotten interested, or the first time I've sort of delved into AI was actually I was working on this competition with a friend, and we were working on it together, and I was typing up some of the details for the competition. It was this website we had to make. So I was typing up some of the about pages and things like that. And we needed some pictures because we couldn't really get the image of this website that we were building. We needed some sort of idea of what pictures we're going to put on and stuff. And so friend does a quick Google search, and he calls me over and he's like, bro, you got to see this. Come here. And I walked over and I see him on a Discord chat. And I'm like, what are you doing on a Discord chat? He talks about Midjourney. Midjourney and the very entry level on the Discord chat. He put in a quick prompt and it gave so many nice images. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. So that was my sort of first introduction to AI. And from then on, I sort of delved into AI, specifically in AI in education. And I went on to do a couple talks, GovAI and some other locations. And yeah, I'm here at AI for Education now. Super excited to be working on some big things. So that's been it.
And thank you. So Pranava pulled us all together. This was his first internship moment. So he did such a good job. But first of all, I just want to say that what's really fascinating here is that we're not just like have a panel of high school and college students that are focused on AI, but the really interesting part is that you all are focused on AI in education. So you're all doing the work that we do in your own applications, which I think is just so amazing because I think that it shows how important this moment in time is and that recognize that this inflection point within schools, I think is really amazing. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick off with our first major question. And I just want to know more about how you're using generative AI. So you got our first year student who's got a million things on your plate, Nick, but like, how are you actually using it for your own practice?
Absolutely. So I think there are lots of great ways to use AI in a responsible manner, and that's something that I really try to encourage when I speak with other students and talk with faculty about how students are using AI. So a great way that I use it is, for example, I develop a piece of writing and then I put it into a tool like ChatGPT and say, "Can you please give me a critique of this writing on the style of voice or the style of writing, the voice, the flow, cohesion, structure, things of that nature." And then it's able to sort of give me some really great suggestions that I then go and take and implement. Another great way I've used it is by inputting my study material into it. So I've, for example, I had a cognitive science midterm last semester, and I went and put all my material there. I said, please generate short answer questions for me and grade my answer 1 through 5, which was the format of the exam. And then it developed original questions, right? And I was able to have a really interactive and dynamic conversation with AI. And it was a really helpful way to help me study. I didn't use that as my main study, I didn't use that as the only study tool, but I think it really complemented the other tools I was using, such as active recall and some other strategies as well.
That's great. And I think that I always love when I see like tools around you're using it for your own feedback because I mean, you're in college, right? You're at Yale, and so I'm sure you have support, but you're in this world now where you're no longer in a high school and you're getting all this support, right? And so studying really is left to your own devices. And so I remember that moment. So the fact that you're using these tools to partner around a study aid is really great. And I think that, how did you do on your test?
I ended up doing really well. Was very happy with how it went.
Good. I have no doubt, but that is fun. Okay, awesome. And then Anna, same question to you. So how do you use AI in your own practice?
So yeah, very similar to Nicholas. I try to be very cautious with the line because obviously there's a huge conversation about the academic integrity of that. And that is something very important to me. But I do view AI as a super valuable tool. So I do very similar things like I insert my notes and say, hey, could you please generate some multiple choice questions for me? Like it's a great studying tool. I also, as I mentioned before, I love to write like creative writing. So whenever I'm trying to like, there's a sentence that's not flowing quite right, I'm like, hey, what's up with the syntax? Can you give me feedback here? The structure, the synonyms, and it's great for that as well. I also think it's really great for like for summarizing large chunks of work because you're in class and you're taking all these notes and you're like, okay, what did I write? I have so much of everything. So it's really great to just really consolidate your notes and really get to the key important stuff. So yeah, that's how I use it.
And did you like, well, we'll come back to this question, but I'll come back to Nick too. But we had a question from the audience about like, how did you learn how to prompt, Anna? Like, did you just do it through trial and error? Did you get support from your school or were you doing it on your own?
It was trial and error, really. And then you find the more specific you are, that's kind of how I realized, okay, that's where I need to kind of direct it towards. Because again, it's a tool, it's not perfect. But I did find that it really did help once through trial and error.
That's great. And Nick, just before I go to Pranava, how did you take any classes or you just did it by kind of figuring it out?
Yeah, so my sort of introduction to prompt engineering was trial and error when I was sort of beginning to explore the technology. There is no classes available at Yale or available, I would say, even any high school or college across the world just focused on AI literacy. But then as I sort of got more engaged in the work, I started looking online for resources, and I found empirically based resources and strategies to employ, such as giving the AI a persona, giving it really clear examples with one shot or few shot prompting, as well as some other great strategies.
That's great. And so just so everyone knows, one shot is very similar to our prompt library, which are going to be very simple prompts with highly specific context. And then few shot is where you give it examples of what you want. So for case for maybe Anna, you're giving it examples of some sentences you do like, and then asking it to help you refine what you're doing. So that's really great. Okay, Pranava, how do you use it? I know you use it a lot. And then
Yeah,
like, how did you learn how to do it?
sure. So starting off with how I use it. So the first thing is ChatGPT, or I personally use Cloud.ai much more, but it's almost become something like a second Google for me, right? Like Google is like, okay, cool. I'm gonna go on there and I'm gonna search something up that I need to like sort of figure out which websites I need to go from there, and sort of dig deeper. But I was currently working on some sort of research project, and for that, sometimes I come across some very, very specific questions. And even as a student, like when I'm learning, I come across very, very specific questions. And for that, Google provides too much of a general sort of list of websites that I can go to. So this is when I pivot and I use ChatGPT, and it sort of gives me a much more concrete answer. Of course, I do have to fact check the information. That's something that I would definitely want to point out because ChatGPT is not always right. But that's been the sort of the main use of ChatGPT and also brainstorming ideas. So I can shrink the time between, me thinking of my own idea to me getting a whole list of ideas and just picking and bouncing off ideas from there. So those have been the two main uses. And me getting into it. So when I first started, it was trial and error for sure. We didn't have like the resources that we're putting up in AI and education back then, which are really helpful now, but didn't have them back then. So it was just like, okay, sitting there and figuring out, okay, this worked, this didn't, this got me the right thing, this didn't. And like Anna said, the more specific you are and the more specific that you get with what you want, it sort of feeds better results. But yeah, it was definitely a trial and error.
That's great. And actually, so there are some tools called generative search. And so that kind of combine the two things. So Nick, do you want to talk about Perplexity?
Yeah, absolutely. So Perplexity is a generative search tool. So essentially, the knowledge in which it pulls in order to answer your questions are all resources online. It's sort of a Google, but just infused with a lot more a much clearer database that's not just synthesizing information in in the same way ChatGPT does. And then along the research lines, there are also some great tools such as Skype, Elicit, and Consensus, which pull data from empirically based articles and peer-reviewed articles as well.
That's great. And what I'd say is what we'll do is we'll make sure that we'll include those at like when we get the Q&A. So maybe, and we'll include that in the email after as well. So these are great. And then the site that Pranava uses, Cloud AI. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Pranava?
Yeah, essentially it's like another version of ChatGPT. It's just a little more up to date. I found it to be more up to date, more recent. So Cloud.ai, it's spelled C-L-A-U-D-E.
Oh, Claude. Okay.
Claude. That
I was
maybe
like,
I'm saying it
I
wrong.
don't know what Claude.
Claude.ai. Sorry, my apologies. Maybe I'm saying it wrong, but
No, you're good.
Claude.ai.
I thought you were telling me something that I was like, oh, and actually Claude was
Yeah, it's
updated
Claude.ai. I think
yesterday. Yeah,
yeah,
so
they
Claude
came
now.
out with the new update. It's huge update. It's really cool. And I also wanted to point out Gemini. That also like Google released something where they also have like a way for you can click like a little Google icon on Gemini when you put in a prompt, and it can give you a bunch of like where the sources were from what you put in. So I found that to be very useful too when I was doing the project. But yeah, those two I'd say I'm mainly on now. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes way more sense because I was like, I've heard that
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
I've spent a
Anthropic.
lot of time learning
They're
about this
incredible.
stuff. But no, that's great. And so actually it's really interesting though, because I think that one of the questions we had is about the ethical component. And so we'll do one more about you all before we move to like the larger, let's go out a lens. But like so we talked about perplexity, we talked about being more up to date like Claude, so there are knowledge cutoffs, which is amazing. So you've built some really strong literacy. But how do you verify? Like we have our every framework where we talk about verifying the output, right? That you're the owner. Like you can't say ChatGPT messed up. You have to be the one that owns that. So how do you own the way that you ensure that the thing you're submitting or learning about isn't hallucinated or made up? Nick, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is AI literacy is perhaps becoming one of the most important skills that anyone could have. And interestingly, as students, when we enter the workforce, a lot of employers, when we're looking at these job postings, ask that we have AI literacy and prompt engineering skills. So for a framework that I employ, I like to look, for sort of hallucinations and biases, and you sort of could put them together, but for hallucinations, what I do is every time there's a specific claim or argument that's not general knowledge, I go and verify that. So I'll use Google, I'll use Perplexity, and find that claim online. For biases, those can be a little bit more nuanced and sort of embedded into the core concepts, but I'll ensure that it's important to note, of course, all AI models are trained on human input and humans are biased. So therefore AI is biased, it doesn't emerge out of thin air. But yeah, I definitely verify each claim using external sources.
Yeah. And I mean, the cool thing about this group is that you all know that like even generative search is going to mess up, right? These things, there's no foolproof way because these technologies are always hallucinating. They're just wrong sometimes and we call it a hallucination or a fabrication. So I think that this is something that, though, to your point, Nick, is that we do like the AI literacy component, which we'll come back around to, is so important because you have to learn to be critical users. And it's so easy to like take your eye off the ball or fall asleep at the wheel. And I think that this is why we're going to come back around to like what you think needs to happen to build that literacy. But Anna, like, how do you approach it? Do you have do you use different tools or like, what's your approach to verifying outputs?
So very similar to Nicholas, if it ever makes a claim, I'm always first to check it and make sure it's correct. But personally, what I do is I use it more. I more so find my own work and then use like AI tools and platforms really to kind of enhance my work. So I wouldn't say that I'm kind of prompting it for the information. I'm more looking for it myself than helping me like modify it, condense it if needed. So, but I always like proofread it, make sure that I'm fact checking it. Yeah.
And like that's I love that though, because what you're doing is you're actually choosing a use case that you feel confident in. And so I
Mhm.
think that is also really interesting, is that you're kind of the same way that Pranava, you were talking about the fact that you use it as like a secondary, like you pivot to it, but you're not always going there first. I think is really a fascinating component too, is that you've learned that it's good for a thing, right? And that's the thing that you use it for, which I think is really important to recognize too, is that it's not necessarily an all-time everything tool yet, but a more specific.
And whenever I'm like presenting it, one of the key things that I always say, it's there to support student work, not replace it. So that's kind of like my approach with it. I'm also like very cautious when it comes to that. But yeah, that's just how I approach it.
That's great. Pranava, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. So I've went into some of these chatbots just for fun, just to see where the hallucinations that sort of happen. I found it does happen a lot with math. And there are some bots out there that are really good with math, but with Claude, at least it's earlier models and even ChatGPT like 3, when I input a certain math question that I know the answer to, it generally it's like sometimes doesn't give the right answer. And what I find myself doing is typing in, hey, I think you might be wrong on this one. Can you double check it? And when I do that, then it rechecks and comes out with a different output that's sometimes right and sometimes still wrong. So it was just a very interesting sort of experiment that you can also try. But when I usually, get sort of hallucinations and things, first I like to check it with the bot itself just to see what would happen. And then, of course, cross-reference with Google and actual sources online just to make sure that everything's sort of, right in a sense. And so, yeah, I guess similar to what Nick and Anna do.
That's great. And just as a reminder, right? The reason why it doesn't do math is it's not a calculator.
Yeah.
And it's not a thinking machine, right? And so if it gets it right because of like the training data and the predictive qualities. And so May
Yeah.
says it couldn't convert time zones. It doesn't know time zones in a real way, right? And it's not able to do that math, and that there are tools that are going to be better for that. But I love that you took that experimental fact like thing, because I think this moment of seeing it not work, next time you do this, you're not going to use it for your math homework, right?
No,
Like you're,
definitely.
if anything, you're going to use it in other ways that you feel more confident in the output. So I think
Yeah.
that's a great way to kind of
And
show that literacy, that trust that needs to be built.
yeah, and sort of the easier way I can put it is kind of like if it did get the math problem right, it's almost as if it's seen that math problem before somewhere online.
Yes.
And that's just where I can sort of draw that conclusion and say this is what I think is right. And so that's what's happening behind the scenes. But if it hasn't seen it, or if there's a problem that's a little more odd or slightly worded different, it'll get it wrong. And then of course you can ask it to double check and verify online. So,
Absolutely. And so those training data sets. So if you're following the way they benchmark these tools, they like sometimes they benchmark it on questions that are publicly available that were most likely in the training data set. But sometimes they like the better benchmarking is when they take these assessments that have not been online and that are new, and that way they can actually, they're novel questions, and that's when you can actually benchmark how good these models are. Okay, so next we're going to come out a little bit of a lens because you guys are interested in AI education. So what is happening at Stanford? What is happening at Middleton and in Orlando? Like, what's happening around you? Because you guys are early adopters, you're first movers, so I know that's not the case. So Nick, do you want to talk about what's happening at Stanford?
Yeah, so I'm at Yale.
Oh
So
gosh,
at
sorry.
Yale,
Oh man,
you're good. You're good.
sorry.
It's the
I
Golden
saw
Gate
you
Bridge
at
behind me.
Stanford.
Yes, yes. Um, so at Yale, I'm one of the roles that I have there is the inaugural AI ambassador for the Teaching and Learning Center. So I work closely with faculty to innovate their pedagogy to responsibly incorporate AI. So one of the things that we're really pushing for here is universal access to cutting edge foundational models such as GPT-4 or Claude 3 in order to ensure that all students, despite their socioeconomic status, as well as faculty, right, because it applies to faculty as well, that they all have access to it. But I think one of the things that I'm really seeing on this sort of equity point is there are a lot of professors who outright reject AI's relevance in academia at all. They don't even want to consider it. I heard it, speaking to a professor the other day, he said it was just a plagiarism machine, right? I think that is born out of a place of fear and a sort of, I have to admit, ignorance even for how AI works and its sort of place and potential in the classroom. On the other hand, there are a lot of other professors who have taken a very growth mindset oriented approach. They've started exploring AI through hands-on use, doing AI literacy tasks in their courses, infusing AI for problem-based learning, as well as other great strategies. So I think one of the things I'm really concerned about right now is this sort of inequity in classrooms that's perpetuated or caused by both the technology and the AI level of literacy that the professor or teacher has.
Well, that is amazing. And yeah, I think that we talk a lot about how this is an equity issue, right? That some students are going to get a leg up and some are going to get stopped. And even potentially at Yale, like just like professor by professor, or by, English department versus computer science department versus, like that, even the types of majors that you have could really impact your knowledge before you go into the workforce. I don't know, I'm sure this group is aware, but the IMF says about 70% of US jobs will be impacted by generative AI in the US, and it's by far the highest in the world. And so I think that that's something for you all, like as educators, but also as students, is going to be a big impact for you all. So Anna, what about you? Because I think it's really interesting because you've already kind of signaled this a bit already, that you're really cautious about getting started and really cautious about what the line is for ethical use. Is that something that you're seeing at school that makes you a little bit cautious?
So yeah, great question. My school, I actually have to say, like with our cybersecurity like team and whatnot, they are really like invested into this program. Like I've spoken with them, they're fully supportive of my student voice. But when it comes to on a teacher to teacher basis, yeah, they're exactly what like Nicholas was saying. There are some teachers that are very like completely reluctant to that. And not even just reluctant, flat out like rejecting any possibility of it. So when I come to them, approaching them with my AI lectures, I've flat out been told no, not interested. Or if they do say yes, I have to be very careful with how I respect their classroom rules. But as a whole, my school has done a fantastic job in supporting me with that. But I will say it has been a lot of student initiative of getting the conversation started, which I think is really interesting. And of course, you have some amazing teachers and faculty members who are there supporting and clearing the way for students like me who are interested in it. But yeah, exactly. I am a little bit cautious with that because I'm aware of both sides of the argument and I want to appeal to like the entire faculty. So, yeah.
Do you think students are using it like without not like how do you think the students are using it at your school?
Students at my school, I will say that they are like familiar with it, obviously. I will say this, the students who are using it academically, like dishonestly, were already doing that in previously without AI, which is one of the big things like people ask me, like, oh, isn't this going to encourage cheating? I say that the people who already were cheating were doing it without AI. So that's kind of how I view it. But there are other kids like me who are interested in using it in a academic in a responsible and educated way. So I think that it's also fostering that excitement for it because I do think it exists in a responsible
Yeah.
manner.
Absolutely. And we see from this is actually at Stanford. So Victor Lee, I was on a panel with Victor, where I'm a couple weeks ago. Victor Lee is the professor that's been leading the cheating. He's been doing a study on cheating for the last 15 years and found that 60 to 80% of students have cheating behaviors. And so there was an expectation that going back into the classrooms in 2023, when we've seen other types of behaviors that have increased, like the fact that internet scams went up 1,200% in the first year of ChatGPT, that there would be another rise in cheating. And what they found is that exactly what you just said, Anna, is that there's not more cheating, it's just different cheating. And so I think that that's something that's been really interesting to see. And so, we do have to kind of recognize that these behaviors that already existed before, and now it's just a new tool to do something ethical. So to you, Pranava, so you're in a, like what's happening around you at your school?
Yeah, so we actually have a local university, University of Florida, and they're creating their own like AI literacy programs they're putting out to high schools. And I'm right now currently just helping them sort of implement it into our own high school. So we're actually getting a AI literacy program as a part of one of our magnet classes at Middleton High School. So that's been really great. And now going into the use cases that I see around me, with students, I see it fall under three camps. One is the students that are completely like, no, I'm not going to use that at all. It's just something that I don't want to get into. I don't even understand how it works. I'm good. Two is, well, I'm going to use it responsibly. I know how this thing works. I researched it, and I think it's, something that I can use for certain things. And that's a very small minority, group two. But group three is, this thing is the best thing ever. I'm going to use it for everything. And so what I find is that the people who are using it for everything, they know the least of how it actually works. And when you find out, like, just like I was saying, the AI hallucinations, AI bias, when these things start coming up and AI doesn't do everything, then they sort of find like, oh wait, that's not working how I wanted it to work. And it's sort of a little lag there. And then I do want to get on like cheating real quick. So, and what Anna was saying is completely correct, right? The kids who were cheating before, they're going to continue to cheat now, and just in a different way. And all the checkers and everything out there, sure, they work for a little bit, but once the next update hits, they're not going to work as well anymore. Like GPT zero is out there; it's one of the best checkers, but even it's struggling to sort of determine AI versus human. And kids who want to cheat will find a way to do it. But I would still believe the AI can be used as a very, very ethical tool and can be brought into education in a very, very nice way. And we can reduce that cheating just overall as like, let's stop students cheating instead of students cheating with AI. You know what I mean? So, and yeah, I guess that's what I'd say.
Right. Two things. Number one, I have a funny story, but I'll get back to that. But the second thing is AI detectors, everybody. If you're in this audience, I am sure you know us and you know that we do not support AI detectors as anything that is a final word. We know that there are false positive and false negative rates, and that they can be potentially biased against non-native English speakers. So they're definitely not there. If anything, a little bit of a toolkit. But if you're an educator out there and your kid suddenly comes in with a different vocabulary, I joke about it. It's like they lived in, London for 2 weeks. They come back with an accent and a monocle and a cane. Like, that they've changed their whole voice, that usually you're able to identify that. But my funny story is I was in a school 2 weeks ago, everybody, and someone was accused of AI cheating and they called their parents. And the parent said, my student didn't use AI because I helped them with their homework. So old school teaching's okay, but new school. So, I think that was a good anecdote that this stuff is happening and that it is something that is going to require some rethinking of like why students cheat, that goes beyond just this moment in time. So we've come around this a lot. And I think that, this idea of AI literacy building, and there's actually a ton of really great questions that kind of come in and around here. So we know that we want students to use these tools responsibly. We also want to know that teachers feel confident having these students use these tools responsibly. So Nick, like when you think about what you're doing at Yale, like how do you build AI literacy in students? Like what has to happen? What would you like to happen at Yale to get to a place where you're getting out of this, kind of push and pull that you see happening around you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an excellent question. And I think the first step in that is ensuring that we're transparent about these conversations, that there's not a sort of taboo aura around talking about AI. So all professors address it and, first day of class or whatever that looks like. And another thing is, ensure that there's that all professors go through rigorous process in which they consider AI's benefits and limitations sort of as its own thing. And then as well as, okay, would it be a good idea to integrate in my course? Can I do a pilot? Can I see how this works? And then going back to the sort of inequity part, ensuring that all students have access to the same technology, right? Because, some students are able to afford that $240 a year for ChatGPT, but others that is not something that is feasible for them. As well as just ensuring that there's clear AI policy coming from the top, right? That's flexible enough so that professors have agency over how they incorporate it. Yet at the same time has some clear guidelines, right, about academic integrity and privacy and security, which is another huge thing that we haven't even talked about. But what students put into the bots, and is that going to get trained, or is a company going to use it to train, as well as what professors or teachers put into the bot, that could break if they put personally identifiable student information, that could break FERPA and other regulations there.
And so amazing, Nick, and all those things. But like we had a question about AI literacy. So what, like when we think about AI literacy, you talked about capabilities and limitations. You talked about appropriate and responsible use. Are there other things that you would want to see if a student, like if a student was going to be AI literate or a teacher or a faculty member, what would they know?
Yeah, I would say they would know how to effectively parse, AI generated text and see where the biases and hallucinations are. And they would also know AI tools beyond just Chat GPT. They would know about Midjourney. They would know about tools like Synthesia, which does video generation. And also that they would know how or what a responsible way looks like in terms of, for example, project-based learning. So there's a great example when, I was at the Stanford conference. That's where Amanda and I met in person. And one of the professors there, Chris Peach, who teaches Introduction to Computer Science, he told us how he revamped his course. So, like before, he still teaches students the fundamentals really, really well. But then after that, he enables all his students to use as much generative AI as they would like, whether that's ChatGPT or Synthesia or Midjourney, in order to create really cool projects that resonate with their own interests, right? And what that's doing is that's enabling student agency and creativity and really getting to the heart of why we even learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to add a little bit of a point. I think just foundationally understanding that artificial intelligence is not intelligent and that these are computing probabilistic like models and not thinking models. I think that that is probably I see that happen all the time, that because we call it AI and because it could have a personality and it's first person and even can have a name, that people tend to trust these tools as if they are thinking. And so I think that that's an underlying piece too, that there's just a step back that we need to get to. So that's really great. Anna, what do you think needs to happen, especially from a high school perspective? And you also work with elementary school students. So I'd love to know what you think needs to happen in terms of building that AI literacy.
Yeah, of course. Well, like Nicholas said, I think teachers leading that conversation and becoming familiar with AI platforms outside of ChatGPT is fantastic. And that the teachers who are a little bit hesitant, because I find when you learn more about something, the more well-informed you are about it and the less we fear it. And then I also think that and then explaining to students, here's the right way to use it. I think having a conversation and setting those boundaries, those limitations, but also allowing for there to be a space where AI can be used. I think that them and also explaining to them, okay, you can't use it, or not necessarily you can't use it, but you need to be cautious with it, and here's why. Explaining why there are the concerns rather than just outright banning it, and then explaining to them, here are the risks with it, such as the databases, your not just your academic integrity, but also your intellectual property, but saying there is a way that it can be used, and here is how you can use it. So also providing students the responsible way to use it as well in their classrooms.
Absolutely. All of those things are important. And I think we think of it as like like the idea of transparency in itself is really important for ethical use. We have to feel confident that we can talk about it and not hide it. And if we can do that, then I think it really allows us to have better conversations, to your point, which is great. And then last thing is, Pranava, what do you think? Like, what do we have to do, especially now that you're working with us? Like, what, like we've talked to, so Pranava did this whole thing where he put down like everything he could think we could do and did some great work on thinking about how to bring student voice into that literacy conversation. So what do you think we need to do?
Yeah, for sure. So initially, I guess we can just go back to the very, very head of like a classroom. Say if we're bringing in artificial intelligence to a classroom, the person who needs to know first is the teacher. And like Nick and Anna mentioned, the teacher is the one who's sort of distributing it and sort of explaining it to the classroom. So teacher workshops, letting teachers sort of understand what kids are doing right now. And this workshop itself is a great example of that. Anything to get teachers more on the same page with what's going on with AI and what's going on with students and different things like this, that can definitely help teachers make a decision on how to integrate AI into education. Because let's be real for a second, AI is not going away. It's not something that's just going to stay here for a couple of years and then just take a back seat. It's here, it's happening, so we might as well implement it in a very, very responsible way. And the next things comes down to the students. And I believe the biggest thing here is knowing how it works. See, at the very beginning, when I was using AI, I had no clue how it works. So I'd use it for like all sorts of things, thinking that it'll give me the right stuff all the time. But once I sort of understood that, these models, they work based on data sets, and that entails some like biases and hallucinations there if something's not in the data set or things like that. once you understand how it works, the back end of it, I've definitely become much more responsible within the ways that I use it for sure. Using it for more things that I know are gonna be correct. And so that AI literacy aspect is very, very key for students. If we can teach that to the teachers, then it can all flow top down. And so
That's great.
that's the way I see it with
Um,
that.
so I have a question. Have any of your teachers used Gen AI in a cool way that you're aware of? Like any of your like Nick, have you seen anybody at Yale or that's done something cool that you want to share?
Yeah, so I was just talking about this earlier, actually, in an earlier panel I did here at Yale. So there was a great example of a professor at Yale in the School of the Environment who he, was like every year he has his students do a research project at the end. So what he did was had his students input their research project, what they'd written so far, into ChatGPT and have it give feedback on the work they were doing and the sort of comments they had, as well as ask it to bring new angles that they could consider of sort of attacking this problem or confronting this problem, as well as some counter arguments, right, that they could also address, which would, of course, augment the quality of the research project. Another great example is um, at Yale, we actually, in one of my courses, we're integrating an internal GPT. Train exactly on the data of the course, which is really cool. And then we're going to be doing, in my course, I was coordinating with my professor about this. We're going to be doing an activity where my professor is the one, writing the prompts into the computer, but the prompts that he ends up writing are all guided by the student. So, right, really engaging students with that so they see it, and while he's doing that, he's going to explain about how it works at a foundational level and things of that nature. So just really engaging it, bringing it to the forefront of the class rather than it being taboo, which I feel like is a common thread between what we've all said here.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that's really interesting is that you probably it's like fascinating to see like the good stuff, right? But then also you probably have the ones that are like, pen and paper. We're going to start doing like, the blue books again, back when I was a student, back in the dark ages, everybody. And so we have like those kind of reactions as well. So what about you, Anna? Has anybody like have any of your teachers actually done something cool with you all?
Well, I wish I could say that I have a really cool story, but unfortunately, no, not a lot of them have. There was one teacher for a paper we had to write. She introduced us to Gemini and that one, and she specifically used it for providing feedback on our theses. Like we could ask it for information, for inspiration. But outside of that, that was really the only one instance. And as I said before, it's been a lot of student like led initiatives being like, we want this to be a part of it. And then reaching out to like the cybersecurity team who have their own goals as well. But yeah, like in individual classrooms, not a lot, no.
Do you think, Anna, and I keep saying your name, Anna, do you think that is because you guys, the kids are so much more ahead of the teachers? Is that what's happening? Is that like you guys are kind of leading the charge and teachers are kind of following behind a bit?
I would say there's some teachers that I would say are genuinely just as passionate and really do want to incorporate this into their curriculum. But then like you said, I do think there are some teachers that are also a bit hesitant just because they're not aware or not like fully educated on the subject, creating that bit of kind of like hesitance with it. So exactly as we've been saying before, I think if it isn't this taboo conversation that we really do bring it up and we use it in the right way, I think that it doesn't have to just be a student situation. It can be something for both teachers and students to collaborate on. But for the time being, yeah, it does at times feel like a lot of student advocation.
Absolutely. And so what about you, Pranavo? Has anybody used it?
Yeah, I've actually had this one really cool guy. His he's always up to date with everything that's going on now and things like that. He's very like, looking at the news all the time, checking out what's the newest in tech and this type of thing. And he's an aerospace engineer teacher. And he was teaching us like aerospace engineering, this type of thing. We were actually building rockets, just little model rockets. And he was like, I want you guys to go on a mid journey and design your own rockets and see what it'll actually look like, and show me, your final project. That'll be a certain grade. And I was like, dude, that's really cool, right? That was like a whole like 30 minutes of everyone just sitting there looking at everyone's rockets. It was amazing. But besides that, not much else. AI hasn't really been used anywhere else that I've seen, at least in a creative manner. And I guess, like Anna said, that's due to the curriculum also, just because in our current curriculum, like public school curriculum, AI is not really a big thing, as it's just sort of getting introduced. Even to my CSIT teachers and different things like that, they're currently teaching like, networking, how do computers talk with one another, Python, basic languages, Java. But I think AI is becoming a bigger thing now. So slowly we can continue to integrate, AI lesson plans like we're doing in AI education into the public school system, which I think will really help. But other than that one little incident, not much else, as it's just not a part of the system yet.
It's really interesting. I mean, I think we see at AI for Education, right? We do see a bit of like a push and pull that there are maybe some early adopters that are like either students or teachers, and it kind of goes back and forth. But where there's a big middle of the bell curve of people that don't quite know what the next step is, whether they're students or teachers, which is really interesting. So I know we're at time, everyone. So if you like want to hang out, we have a ton of good questions. I've been trying to filter them to everybody before we go. But we just want to say thank yous for everyone that's joined, and Dan will drop everyone's LinkedIn. I think Anna, did I make you get a LinkedIn, or did you already have one?
Oh no, I had
Good
one.
one. Good. Yeah. So young people with LinkedIn doing amazing things. But what I want to do is before we go to the questions, I want to do a rapid fire of like, what is your advice to an educator that is thinking about getting started and embracing generative AI and how it can support student learning? Like, what do you think, Nick? What is your one key advice before we go to the questions?
Take the step to change and innovate pedagogy in order to support students in developing critical thinking and creativity skills.
And so snappy, love it. Anna?
I think just have the conversation with your students. I think that there are a lot of students there who are excited to use this platform in a responsible manner. And if you explain to them the reasons why there might be some initial hesitations, but the way that you can use it in the right way, I think that there's endless possibilities that can exist there.
And Pranava?
Yeah, and I'd say just get familiar with AI, sort of integrate it, see if you can put it into your lesson plans and stuff. And AI in education definitely has a bunch of things there, but just go online, see what you can do to bring it in. There's a lot of Reddit forums and everything out there that just give you a bunch of information about it, and then take the leap.
Great. Okay, so we have this a couple of minutes because we have like all the things, but I'm going to ask the one question we didn't quite get to. And first of all, thank you to the audience for being so engaged. Is what kind of tool are you okay, you can pick. What is a tool you're most excited to start using or that you like to use, or what is the use case that you're most excited about that's coming? Like, what is the thing you're most excited about, whether it's a tool or like a way to use it that's on the pike? What do you think, Nick?
I would say OpenAI's Sora. I think it's really cool and seeing how that may develop. And it looks like Pranava is about to say that same thing, but I guess that makes two of us.
Yeah. So Sora, for everybody,
Perfect.
Sora is the like text to video generator that is like all over TikTok and it's like Gemini came, like Google was like, we have a 1 million context window. And then like OpenAI was like, and we can make beautiful videos in 10 words. But is that your two, Pranava? Is that your
Yeah,
excitement?
that was mine as well. But I'll think of another one once.
We'll give it to Anna
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
come back to you. So Anna, what do you think? What are you either most excited to be able to do or a tool you want to use?
I have to be honest, I don't have one in particular that I'm like very specific. One of the really cool things about AI, I think, is that it's constantly evolving. So I think in so many different aspects, it is going to grow and I'm so excited to see the stuff that I wouldn't expect. And specifically, I'm excited in the writing field because because I love creative writing, especially like poetry. And a lot of people think that like with creative writing works, it needs to be solely like the core of it needs to be like human originality, like the authenticity of it. But I also do think that AI, like with its potential, can help enhance that creativity. So I'm really excited to see what the future occurs. I don't have one in particular that I'm thinking of, but yeah, I'm excited about that.
I'm ready to see Anna's like collection of poems that comes out like in the next couple of years. Like as someone that like struggles with writing, I always love people that love writing because I love reading. And so the fact that you see it as a creative like opportunity, I think is amazing. And those English teachers in the audience that are like, AI is only for cheating. Anna is a perfect example of it. That is not the case. In fact, this is something that is supercharging her creativity. And I think that's amazing. Okay, last, Pranava, did you come up with
Yeah.
something?
I definitely do want to say I would want to check out the Claude the new updates to it. That's for sure. Because they're claiming some big things, and I just want to test it out. So that's one tool that I definitely want to use. And other than that, though, the Sora AI, I mean, Nick just he said it all. It's incredible what they're doing now with the text to video and the stuff that I'm seeing on the actual website. That is like a game changer. Like it's really big. So I definitely want to, if users get the hands on it, because I know that's another big thing that people are having now. Like, should we release this commercially, that type of thing. So if it does happen, then that's definitely one of the things that I'd want to get my hands on.
Well, there's also, do you guys see there's a Google one that you can create two-player games? So you can use Gen AI to actually create like multiplayer games now that are really cool. So I think we're going to see a lot of really interesting use cases around that creativity. Well, I just want to say thank you. We're going to let everybody go. Whether you're, going to dinner like Nick is, or like probably going to go talk to your mom and dad, and they'll ask how you guys did, Pranava and Anna. I just want to say thank you so much to our panel. Can we give them such a shout out? These are, first of all, let's remember we have a freshman in college and two high schoolers who are so, if you don't believe that kids can tell you and teach you something in this moment, they are a perfect example. And I know that these are students that care about this and the intersection of AI and education, but we have to listen to students. So it's one thing that I want to say, if I have one piece of advice, if you are not listening to students and you're not partnering with them in this moment, then you're not doing it the right way. And I feel confident saying that. And it doesn't mean that you're not trying, but you have got to include student voice. So I just want to say thank you to our panel. You keep in touch with us. We'll have this recorded. This will not be our last webinar with students. Pranava is going to be with us. I hope Nick and Anna will continue to work with us as well. But just we appreciate everyone, whether it's the morning, the evening, or like it's time for bed. We appreciate you being here, and I hope everyone has a lovely time. And just thank you again to our panel. We just absolutely appreciate you being here.